A lot of shit never seems to stick to Nigel Farage, but finally he looked a little bit rattled this week.
Yes, first there's the awkward fact that Reform's former leader in Wales, Nathan Gill, was jailed for 10 years for taking bribes from Russia while he was a UKIP member of the European Parliament. There was lots of condemnation of Gill from Farage, but no commitment to investigating links between Reform and Russia, because as Farage put it, I am not a police force. First of all, thank God. That's the last thing we need is Nigel Farage being the head of his own private militia. But also, not really a good enough excuse. It's an extraordinary piece of obfuscation.
Well, unsurprisingly, Keir Starmer had a field day with this during his statement about Ukraine in the Commons. Interestingly, Farage chose not to be there when Starmer told MPs you can't be pro-Putin and pro-Ukraine. You have to choose between the two, and Reform is pro-Putin.
So in addition to this, there was a really old story that has also put Nigel Farage even further on the back foot. There are allegations that the teenage Farage racially abused non-white and Jewish pupils in his school. Now, these allegations have actually been around for more than a decade, but The Guardian has once again been digging away at them. But when the BBC Wales political editor tackled Farage this week, the wheels started to come off.
The question is, did you ever racially abuse fellow pupils in school?
No,
You've caveated it with a hurtful way.
Not with intent.
What do you mean not with intent? I don't understand what you mean by not with intent. What does that mean?
You wouldn't do.
But what does that mean?
No.
No what?
No. I have never directly really tried to go and hurt anybody.
You're opening the door there to perhaps you did it without meaning to offend.
Have I said things 50 years ago that you could interpret as being banter in a playground, that you could interpret in the modern light of day in some sort of way? Yes. But isn't it funny?
Okay, she did say stuff to these people then.
I've never directly racially abused anybody. No.
Now, we discussed this briefly on the pod last week, but that interview on Monday has really escalated the story. Reform said the claims were without foundation and an attempt to smear Farage. But hearing Farage's interview, ex-pupils then went on to the BBC to challenge his account.
One Jewish former classmate said, "One of the most vivid memories of my school life is Farage repeatedly coming up to me and, knowing I was Jewish, saying Hitler was right and gas him. And that was frequently followed by a kind of imitating the sound of escaping gas."
After that, Nigel Farage doubled down, telling GB News, "I categorically deny saying those things to that one individual. And frankly, for The Guardian and the BBC to be going back just shy of half a century to come out with this stuff shows how desperate they are."
I mean, it's also worth pointing out, just because I think it is something that doesn't necessarily tally with Farage's public image as a man of the people. The school in question is a very exclusive private school, Dulwich College in South London. But what I would say is Farage has had a very easy ride in the British press. But I would say this is what it looks like when he's faced with direct and tough questions, right?
Yeah, I think the thing that is so surprising is that this is the story that's cut through when actually there will be some who hear his argument that is, it was over half a century ago. I was a teenager. I've always been a provocateur, whatever. And we'll accept that. Whereas we could just look at things that he's done as an adult man and the far right parties, let's be honest, Nazi leaders and characters that he has liaised with. We don't need to go back to what happened in the playground.
On the Russia front, clearly Starmer thinks there's mileage in it. Also, the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, said that Farage was previously paid to be on Russian President Vladimir Putin's TV channel, Russia Today, and has asked, we must all ask, where do his loyalties really lie? Meanwhile, Mike Katz, the Labour peer and former Jewish Labour movement chair, said Farage is essentially arguing you can racially abuse people without it being hurtful and insulting, while Liberal Democrat MP for Eastbourne, Josh Babarinde, christened him No Answers Nigel. Listen, outside of his school career, Farage has a history of indulging in conspiracy theories that are either directly racist or racist at their core. The sort of supposedly responsible right in Britain and America have consistently indulged in the cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. And cultural Marxism is a phrase that was actually invented by the Nazis in Germany in the 1930s. And it was a specific way of attacking the Jewish intelligentsia in the country. And I'm sort of amazed by how frequently I've heard it used in the last 10 years. We've talked about it on this show, I think, with Suella Braverman. I'm amazed at how often it's used by supposedly reasonable conservative politicians or centre-right conservative politicians. Also, Nigel Farage did address the AfD, which is the German far-right party. So what I'm saying is, the problem that he has, I think, with these allegations about things he said as a schoolchild is too much of his adult behaviour means that when these allegations are made, it's not a huge leap for them to be believed.
Yeah.
Okay? I think the adult that addresses the AFD and indulges in, conspiratorial thinking, which is very frequently comes out of anti-Semitic global movements, it's not a very big leap.
Right, exactly.
It's like Trump and the Epstein files. We don't know if he's in them or what he's named as doing, but when it comes out, no one's going to be like, what?
Well, exactly.
Donald Trump?
Exactly. And so, it's hard for me to put myself in the mind of a big reform lover, but I would imagine that what they rank in terms of what they like about Nigel Farage, the idea that he's inclusive with his language is probably pretty low. We're applying progressive standards to a man whose entire brand is eschewing that. So will any of it make a dent on him? I don't know. If we want to look at racist stuff that Nigel Farage has done, we don't need to go back to his teenage years. There's stuff that he's done right now, is doing right now. I mean, I mentioned earlier about his liaising with far-right parties. What I was referring to there was when he was in the European Parliament, he was working very closely with the Swedish Democrats, which was founded by someone from the SS.
Yeah.
So, we don't need to tie ourselves in knots about his teenage extremism.
Yeah.
That said, though, it has been good to watch him fall over himself and to look rattled about this question, which he has sidestepped in for far too long, which is, you're a racist though, aren't you, Nige? You are though, aren't you? Like, it's about time someone pressed him on it, even if he's going to keep sidestepping.